Good evening, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'm Frances Weller. New details tonight on how your drinking water is being protected from forever chemicals. This comes after Environmental Protection Agency announced plans to roll back Biden-era limits on forever chemicals in our water. And now we're hearing from the people responsible for keeping your water free of toxic chemicals. WECT's Ava Bringord took a tour of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority's facility today to get some answers.
For years, man-made forever chemicals were dumped in your drinking water. And now, federal limits for how much can be in the water may be coming to an end. But one water utility service here says nothing is changing for them because they're already ahead of the curve.
We're definitely leading the game nationally, internationally.
Officials with the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, or CFPUA, are proud of its Sweeney water treatment plant in Wilmington, which filters out forever chemicals like Gen-X for nearly 200,000 people. It's one of the few utility companies in the country to meet Biden-era mandates for all forever chemicals to be filtered to the lowest detectable level.
We're where most utilities that are currently designing their treatment processes to address PFAS in their source water look to be in the next 4 to 5 years.
However, other utilities have struggled with the federal deadline to install new filters and the price tag to do so. That's one reason why the Environmental Protection Agency is dissolving forever chemical limits in your drinking water and axing the legal requirement for utilities to filter chemicals like Gen-X, which were dumped into the Cape Fear River for years. But that won't impact CFPUA or its customers, with the utility company having already installed filters that cover the gamut of PFAS.
They've been consistently treating those PFAS to levels of at or near non-detection.
Now the question remains, will other utilities around the state and the country follow in their footsteps? CFPUA is still battling chemical companies to recoup its money spent on the filters. But for them, the upfront cost was worth protecting public health, regardless of what the limit on forever chemicals in drinking water is.
When we decided on the treatment technology, we knew that technology would catch up to PFAS. We were on the front leading edge of it. Now the technology is there.
CFPUA is the only utility service around here that uses special filters to filter out Gen-X. Services in other parts of our region, like in Brunswick County, are also looking into doing this, but it's going to take some time. In Wilmington, Ava Bringord, WECT News.